Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone is over there. She's looking for the ball. Bugsy, it's right over there, mate. Go back over there. I hope you are all happy and healthy doing the things that you love, those that you love to do them with. Guys, do me a favour, smash the nanny out of the like button if you don't mind. If you enjoy the content, hit the subscribe. If you haven't already, we're on the march to 33k. Any support you can show in that regard is greatly appreciated. Just like all of the support that you show the channel is very much greatly appreciated. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. Right, guys, let's get into it. Dennis Cirkin's the first name. I think it's Dennis Cirkin or Dennis Churkin. I'm going to say Cirkin, but forgive me if I'm wrong. He is an ex-club trained, homegrown player out of Sunderland, a fullback, one-sided fullback, competing for this kind of transfer story with Kyle Walker-Peters, also ex-club trained, homegrown number that Tottenham need to kind of tick a box in. We've only got one. I think you have to have up to 4, or you don't have to, but if you don't, then you, for the Champions League, then you can't, use your full squad maximum size allowance, if that makes sense. And so people have been sitting there thinking, well, it's going to be Kyle Walker-Peters that makes the most sense. For me, the guy was a Premier League player, went to Southampton, got relegated, stayed with the club, came back up, stayed with the club, got relegated again, and now the decision is he going to leave. He wants to come back to Tottenham. I'll be entirely honest, though, some people would call that kind of going down with the ship loyalty. Other people would say, well, a lot of other people that were sort of the better players at Southampton didn't leave, and so why didn't you? Did you take your career seriously? I'm not sort of convinced either way by the player, if I'm entirely honest. Whenever I've seen him, I think he's versatile, but he's not particularly good. And so for me, just on the basis of quality, I'm not that impressed with it. However, like I have said before, I'm okay with the club needing to tick certain criteria outside of just quality as the main predominant consideration here when it comes to areas of the pitch where you do have to consider those things about club trained numbers, as long as they're in areas of the pitch where we have relative squad strength. And I think we do that in a fullback spot. But today's story is that actually the Kyle Walker-Peters notion is actually softening a little bit, and instead Tottenham have turned to Dennis Cirkin. As I say, Sunderland player. When I've looked at him, I did run him through the Y-Scout, I did look at him as extensively as I could find the time to do, and I actually think that he is a better player. I think he's stronger, he's faster, he's more sort of physically imposing, if that makes sense. And I don't mind him at all. I like the way that he runs the ball. I like the way that he kind of takes players on. And I like the way that he... Do you want me to throw the ball for you? Not yet. I like the way that he looks up before he crosses it. He does try to do that kind of final piece of the jigsaw. I don't mind him. However, unfortunately for me, when you are someone that has been constantly asking for consistent logic, and you are also someone that has been saying that Manor Solomon's displays at Championship level should not be the gauge in which you value whether he's good enough at the Premier League level, nor should pre-season sort of friendlies, because they're glorified fitness tests, then I've got to hold that same energy for Dennis Cirkin. And so whilst I like what I see, you have to bake in the context in how you see it. And at Championship level, the gauge and the jump is massive. So I'm not particularly overblown with either of these players. I don't really want either of them, if I'm entirely honest. But if we do have to go in that direction, if Tottenham are having to at least consider the fact that we need another homegrown, another club trained, at least one for our squad to max it, or to try to get closer to the maximum options for the Champions League numbers, then I don't mind it, as long as I say, it doesn't take up a space in a squad that we're already lacking in high quality for. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. But there's a story. Dennis Cirkin is going to be the priority, apparently, according to reports today from decent outlets, ahead of Kyle Walker-Peters. We shall see. I would imagine that that's the sort of thing that gets done towards the end of the window rather than at the start, especially given Daniel Levy's most recent video with regards what do you want me to do? Stop barking and then put your back in your mouth. Typical girl. Jesus Christ. Anyway, yeah, I just think Daniel Levy's saying that he has, got the ambitions to win the Premier League and everything. Well, if the next sort of name out of the kind of hat here, the next horse or the next dog out of the traps is an ex-club trained homegrown player, I think the fan base will go mental and say, typical Daniel, all talk, no walk. And we hope that's not the case. We want to see someone bigger coming in next, someone that gets you a little bit kind of, salivating by the prospect of what might be to come. And here's the story for you, of course. I haven't had a chance to do this to you in a Tottenham news, views and clues update, but of course, the big story over the weekend was that Eberechi Eze was, or the agent or the clubs, whoever, were keeping everything very close to their sort of chest with regards to the truth behind the clause that's supposed to trigger on the 1st of July. In fact, this notion that you have to pay £68 million up front in one lump sum to get him, well, that's not the case. Actually, according to reports from Paul O'Keefe, who blocked me live on Twitter, live on air, on a live stream, I don't know why. He said, actually, no, it's three £20 million instalments, and apparently the details of that are that it's in 3 consecutive windows. So one in this summer, one in January, one next summer. So it would be more like a £60 million over a year, which, to be entirely honest, isn't that much different from £68 million in one lump sum, apart from the cash degenerative stuff. Paying £60 million out over basically 3 windows, which is 1 year, is still quite prohibitive. However, it's good news in as much as it doesn't completely destroy your cash flow or to the same extent, and it's good news in as much as it should make the story more malleable. Now, the interesting part here, though, is, for me, what happens now that other teams are aware of that? Previously, when it was £68 million in one lump sum, that was the belief, and that Crystal Palace weren't willing to sort of negotiate or move on the number, and therefore, if you wanted him, then you have to put all the money up front. But the only club in the Premier League that had that money in the bank in cash reserves was Tottenham Hotspur, who, according to Leavenomics, had £72 million, and that was the most in the Premier League, but very low historically for Tottenham's purposes. Well, now that that's not the case, maybe that opens the door to more competition for his signature. And so it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's good news in that Tottenham can maybe do a little bit of business and get in a monster, get in a sort of statement signing, a marquee signing, if you like, that will make everybody go, hey, now we're doing business, now let's kick on from there. And that maybe Daniel Levy's choice of words in the timing that he chose to say them right at the start of a transfer window, interesting, ballsy, bolshy time to release that statement, knowing what sort of reaction it would garner from the fan base. A fan base that, you know, have kind of had very mixed reactions to him recently. I think in the last sort of 6 months, a lot of people that were kind of joining that Change for Tottenham movement, well, they kind of probably were walking back across the Oki with the way that he handled the PR in the build-up to the final, with the flags, the tifos, the tickets for the staff, obviously winning the trophy. A lot of that kind of maybe sort of dampened the movement with regards Change for Tottenham, at least temporarily. Then you had the sacking of Ange that split the fan base down the middle, and a lot of the people that are Levy out took that as an opportunity to go, enough is enough. Other people said, actually, it was a brave decision, a difficult decision, and probably the right decision. And so, again, you've got people that are jumping both sides of the fence, trying to look at this from, you know, all 360 degrees in the circular of the argument. And so how he then comes out with that video saying our ambitions are to do this and that, at that timing, well, if he doesn't walk the walk with it, it's going to be curtains, it's going to be finito. So getting the Eze story done now will be a great step towards that continued momentum of a pat on the back time for Daniel Levy. If he doesn't do it, if someone like Dennis Sirkin or Kyle Walker-Peters is the next name then that we sign, then I think it's going to be a little bit of, oh, Daniel, you've done it again. You're waffling like it was the last time we heard from you really was when we got our Tottenham back after 10 games. You know, opportune moments to seize without reading the room and realising that, you know, there needs to be more than just that. Anyway, if another name that you're going to be hearing about right now is the next guy off the traps, I think it will be more of a similar thing. Not for the same reason, but more for the we don't need any more kids jargon. And for what it's worth, there's a story out from something called River Notifiaya, I think, which is like I think it's an Argentinian River Plate. And it's not a fan channel, it's like a transfer news or like a news blog, but serious in Argentina. And they are saying that Tottenham Hotspur are about to trigger a €26 million, $29 million release clause for their 18-year-old superstar winger, Ian Subiabre, I think is how you say it. I might be wrong on the pronunciation. He's 18 years old, a winger. I looked him up on the Y-Scout. Not a huge amount of content that I could see about him, to be entirely honest, so I'm not going to speak about him like I'm that familiar, because I'm really not at all. But from what I could see, he looks like one of those kind of, you know, flary, kind of flashy players that probably wants to emulate a little bit of Angel Di Maria kind of vibes, and or maybe try and be a little bit like Messi, but on a lesser scale, obviously. Not just Messi, maybe untidy, we'll call him, shall we? I don't know. But 18 years old, big asking price, big release fee for someone that's, you know, obviously would need to be able to, I would imagine, would come in and then be loaned into a Spanish team, similar to what happened with Valiz, and hopefully this guy would, if he was to come to Tottenham, would sort of kick on and become something that we are able to utilise in a couple of years' time. However, as I say, our last experience dipping our toe into the Argentinian market didn't really work out. We haven't seen any news about Villas returning home yet. I think he's going back to Rosario Central, though, just trying to figure out the pricing on it. We shall see whether that story materialises. I don't really have too much more to bring to your attention, but listen, there are a lot of teams, it's not just Tottenham, loads and loads of teams right now are going around trying to find any of the latest and greatest 17, 18, 19-year-old talents. I was looking at Chelsea yesterday. On Football Link, we were talking about the list of Chelsea players that are coming. There's a player from Sporting that's coming next year for £41 million. There's a guy from Kazakhstan who's coming over for £4 million, a Kazakhstani record. They've got a player coming from Brazil for £15 million. Like, Chelsea are doing what Chelsea do. Man City are continuing to do what Man City do. Other teams are trying as well. I mean, Brighton have just bought an 18-year-old from Olympiacos for €30 million. So it's not just a Tottenham theme. It seems to be the trend in football right now. Everybody wants to gobble up the youth. No one's really paying top money for 26, 27-year-olds. That kind of like, it's too old to get any resale value, that line in the sand seems to very much have dropped from, back in the day it was, can you really overpay for a 30-year-old because, where's the resale value? Now that seems to be 26, 27 because you've got 2 contracts at best, and if someone does see through the first 3 or 4 years of it, then they click into that 30-year-old routine. And I guess the argument that we're all living longer and healthier than ever before, maybe that doesn't extend to the way that owners view their assets in football. Everyone seems to be going younger, and I've got to be honest, I feel like it becomes sort of like a zero-sum game. If everybody is doing that and therefore all of the money is going towards youth, then unless you are someone that has a conveyor belt of that talent and is willing to also let people go for the right price as much as buy them for the right price, you might end up overpaying, like we maybe have done with Archie Gray. Possibly, not speaking too soon, but I've got a feeling that one might be one that we come to like buyer's remorse a little bit. Maybe that guy needs a loan. Certainly with Berghvall, it's been a great success, and maybe 1 or 2 others. We'll see what happens with Mason Media, for example. But just to get back on the point here, Tottenham are looking for another one. This one's a £26 million. So if all of these numbers, if everybody with the money is starting to pivot into 18, 19-year-olds from wherever they are in the world, all that does is lift the average price. And essentially then, you're baking in closer to perfection in the valuation before anyone's proven it. And we know the tale of how many kids out there have too much too soon in the world of football and fall off and don't become the superstar that the wonder kid status is usually looking to materialise. Let's move on from that, but that's the story. So Ian Subiabre, I don't know how you say his name, we'll keep an eye on that one, we'll bring it to your attention if the story develops. Kolo Muani, remember him? Plays for PSG, was going to come to Tottenham. Juve ended up getting him. I think the story was that Tottenham were willing to pay his entire wage bill to get him to come to us, which people were like, well, that's a lot of money for a guy that didn't really do it at PSG, yada, yada, yada. Well, he ended up going to Juve, and I'm pretty sure Juve didn't pay any of his salaries, and the PSG covered it, or maybe a small percentage. Can't be sure on that, but they certainly weren't going to pay the entire lot like Tottenham were. He's gone to Juve, 10 goals in 20 games. He smashed it out of the park. Everyone loves him over there. He wants to stay there. But Juve don't have the money to pay the £76 million asking price that PSG are trying to get back from him. I don't think he'll go for 76. That's what they paid for him originally. They want their money back. But look, a lot of French football are currently stuck in a bind whereby they're trying to get their money back on players that they didn't necessarily overpay for. But because of the French financial issues with the TV media rights deal, there's going to be a ransacking of French clubs this summer. Mark my words. And we've already been linked with about 2 or 3 dozen players from that part of the world already. We shall see. But anyway, the story is that both Tottenham and Chelsea are back in for this guy. Chelsea probably more likely to convince him to leave Juve and go to them if he was to come to the Premier League. Clearly he doesn't rate Tottenham, and despite winning the Europa League, has the 17th placed finish from last season left an indelible mark on some of the willingness, some of the kind of the desirability for Tottenham Hotspur. We shall see, but the story is that Tottenham are looking at Kolo Muani as an option if Eze Semenyo and Brian Mbeumo doesn't work. But there, Kolo Muani, great player, cracking player. Would like to have seen him coming in January. Didn't happen. Maybe this summer is going to happen for us. But at the moment, Chelsea are ahead of us in the queue for that one. But Chelsea are looking at every single winger that's out there. They've already got enough wingers But they're still looking. I think that might be down to a little bit that the Jamie Gitton story that they thought that they were going to wrap up very easily. Well, that doesn't seem like it's happening at the moment. The story today is that one is broken down to some degree. I'm not sure of the details, but so maybe Chelsea are moving in a different direction. We shall see. Just some other updates for you guys. I won't keep you too much longer. There's 5 more names for you that we've heard of before. 4 more names, sorry. One of them is Coney de Winter. So Ben Jacobs has mentioned these four names as targets that Tottenham are looking at, having conversations with the agent, and pending the viability, the desirability for those players to come, then they are putting on that shortlist. Obviously, think about if we've got Mr. Paratici working in the background, his ban is up as of Sunday. He can come in, I think, then. I know he's still sorting out some civil litigation. It's all gone a bit quiet on whether Paratici's coming back front. But listen, even if he's not back officially, I'm sure he'll be doing some things in the background. But a lot of these names we're hearing about are always out of Italy right now. We heard the Leone story, the wonder kid out of Parma yesterday or the day before yesterday. That one seems to be heating up as well. But Coney de Winter, a centre-back that Tottenham really like the look of, and I'll be honest, I like the look of him as well. Old school sort of style, stature, no nonsense, very, very, very good, very strong, good in the challenge, good in the air, the sort of thing that we need. A lot of these probably will depend on whether or not Christian Romero is here. We remember that the Christian Romero story at the moment, the latest we've heard, is that the Romero has got on board Thomas Frank's new project and is okay staying. Whether or not the club are okay with him staying after the third or whatever it is attempt to kind of, infer problems or whatever at the top remains to be seen. As I said a few times, the question mark for me is if Christian Romero is this top draw, cup winning monster that on paper at least he definitely is, right? 5 out of 6 finals that he's participated in, 5 out of 6 trophies he walked away with. But whether or not he is willing to be a part of this, Bugsy's got a mate. Well, I've got a mate. Hello, mate. I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, no one's coming for him. Atletico Madrid are tapping him up every day. Apparently, Lo Cholo, Diego Simeone, is phoning him every day saying you have to come, you've got to do whatever you've got to do to get here. And he apparently wants to go to La Liga. That's where he sees his future. Fair enough. But you know what? That doesn't mean we're going to lower the asking price just to keep you happy. So someone better come up with 70 million readies. And if not, then I think he stays. But if he does go, then Coney de Winter is one of the names that is touted. Now, he won't cost anything like 70 million quid. So don't expect a replacement that's going to be as good. But for the money, can you go and put that saved money into other areas and go and get a monster in the 6, for example? Well, one monster 6 that has been touted again and again and again is, of course, Brentford's Christian Norgard. Flies under the radar over there. A no-nonsense 6, a really solid player, captain, 31 years old, a player that most people won't kind of go, wow. But actually, if you go and sort of dig into him, you can see why Brentford have been so steady and sustainable. They don't give away too many issues, too many opportunities. They don't make too many mistakes when they're in the transition, like other clubs can do with players and profiles of players that have got that kind of tendency to look out for the opportunity rather than the threat. Norgard is that kind of simplified, simplistic footballer that just does his job. He's sort of no nonsense, and just is a steady Eddie that's going to also add a little bit of kind of responsibility, professionalism, leadership to that kind of squad, to that team. And obviously he knows all of the staff then at Tottenham now. So maybe there's some stories there. The problem is he did just sign a new contract last year with Brentford. I'm not sure if Daniel Levy will be okay with the profile being, I think he's 31 years old, isn't he? I think so. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But there's a story there for you that Christian Norgard won't go away. Mark Gahey, another name that won't go away. Now, we thought that he was going to Liverpool after he rejected Newcastle and rejected Tottenham. We put in a £70 million bid for him. Ben Jacobs says, don't forget that happened in January. And it's likely that should Crystal Palace sort of shake hands with the reality that they're not going to be able to keep him next summer, that he's not going to sign a new contract and he will walk away for free unless something happens, then maybe Crystal Palace will sit down with Gahey's agents and say, hey, listen, we have a good relationship here. Let's not, kind of, I want to say do the dirty, but let's not kind of forget all of the history we spent together. Let's find a mutual sort of release fee where we can get some money back on you and go again and go and get someone like a Diamandi, for example, from Sporting. Anyway, the story is that Liverpool will wait for him to be on a free. Newcastle United and Tottenham will be willing to pay some money for him, and maybe £50 million is the asking price, which isn't bad for a considering the market right now is so in flux and no one really knows whether it's a buying market or a selling market. Also, you've got the new financial year starting in 7 days' time. Will there be a bidding war for him? Will there be a flurry for him? Do you really want Mark Gahey at Tottenham if he already turned you down only 5 months ago? Do we want people that are all pulling in the same direction and that respect and appreciate the standard and the status of Tottenham Hotspur that exists? Now, did Mark Gahey say no to a team that he thought was never going to win anything? But actually 4 or 5 months later, that whole Spursy thing is now out of the window and we can't be called that because we are the Europa League champions. Maybe that has changed things in his regard. Maybe he's more open-minded now. Either way, let me know your thoughts on Mark Gahey. Do you see it happening at all to us or to Newcastle or anywhere else? To Liverpool maybe this summer, or do you think he'll do what players do, wind down the contracts and then get themselves and their agent a nice juicy signing fee later on when the contract expires? The last story for you guys, which is a player that I absolutely adore, right? And if you're going to be saying, oh, no more kids to this one, then I think you need to go and have a quick little look at yourself in the mirror, because this guy for me is a tasty. He is 18-year-old Jarell Hatto, left back, left-sided centre-back for Ajax, rose up, shot up to fame and dominance this season. He is doing amazing things. He doesn't look like an 18-year-old. He's a big, strong, fast, physical guy, kind of a little bit like a Jurian Timber type to me. Like, I really, really like this guy. I think he's got everything about him to come in and to mix it up with Destiny Udogie on the left, and also where necessary to mix it up with Micky van der Ven. And I think then if you have the sort of calibre of players we've got that are all a little bit versatile, right? You've got Jed Spence that can pop either side of the fullbacks. You have Ben Davies, if he's going to be here, we don't know, but he can play left in a 3, probably is where you're going to see him more than anything, absent some sort of injury crisis, but he can also play as a left back if necessary. You have Micky van der Ven that can play left back or left-sided centre back. You've got Kevin Danzo, who can do either side. He's more of a right-sided, but he wouldn't be completely out of place on the left. Christian Romero, who thinks he can do, he's better on the right but can play on the left as well, and I don't mind or hate that one at all. What else is there? You know, you've got Pedro Porro, who can obviously play on the right side, and to be entirely honest, can probably come up and play a little bit further up the pitch as well. We have versatility, which is one of the takeaways that I still respect and appreciate about Ange. He did want players that can do... Oh, where's my camera gone? Hang on, sorry about that. Don't know what happened there. I think the tracker was stopped when I went off the screen. He did want players that can do a little bit of everything. Now, he didn't really use them a little bit of everything way, but when you've got someone like Thomas Frank in charge and his team of really, really top draw coaches that are all coming in, well, now you have a bunch of players that can be essentially sort of picked up and played around with in different situations, different solutions, different formations for different situations. And I think that is something that is really going to be of benefit to Tottenham, that you have these players that are capable of doing many different things, not necessarily masters of one. I wouldn't say jacks of all trades, but maybe very competent players in a variety of different positions, and those things can only offer options. And when you have options, you are unpredictable. And as you know, I always say that the second best ability is unpredictability. And I can't wait. I cannot wait to see what this squad, however it ends up by the end of the summer, will look like, and how it will be utilised in a way that hopefully is considered, prepared for, organised and shaped and structured in a way that is cognizant and contemplative of the opposition and what their strengths and weaknesses are, but at the same time that we can do things with our system that hopefully Thomas Frank can get more juice from the squeeze, bingo, from a better, higher quality group of players, and that essentially other teams won't know what version of Tottenham to expect and how to set up appropriately. And those sorts of scenarios, those sorts of nuances are what will give you an edge in a game where fine margins and small percentage points can be the difference between winning and losing. Love to see it. That's your transfer news, views and clues for you this morning, guys. I'm sure I'll be back later on with a live stream or two, and hopefully a couple more interesting names for you. But smash the like button if you enjoyed the content, hit the subscribe if you haven't already, hit the notification bell, and don't forget, Spotify is where you can find this stuff as well in audio and video format, as well as on Amazon and soon to be Apple Pods. All the links in the description. Football Inc as well this afternoon, don't forget that one. Get over there and subscribe to that as well. Like, subscribe and comment. As always, bye-bye.